One of the most important things you should have learned in Street Smarts 1 is not to lock up the rear brake in a panic situation. You want to use your front brake. Here you see the front brake being used. He stops in a much shorter distance than he would have using the rear, as you can see by the length of the skid mark. Yeah, this test was done. The rider was going the exact same speed each time, and as you can see, the rear brake just lays down a skid and you keep rolling. Had there been a car in the intersection, he surely would have hit it, and as you can see in the front brake, he stopped way early. So you should be at ease on the motorcycle. You should know how to stop. You should also know how to turn. You should be able to turn your bike at slow speeds, high speeds, and you should also understand that a bike turns by countersteering, as we showed you. Right there's another one. So you should be at ease on your motorcycle and on freeways, on city streets. And what we're going to do now is we've asked questions of racers. And as you know, we believe that racers are the best motorcycle riders there are because they ask more of their motorcycle in one lap than you probably will in a lifetime. There's a lot of information here, so listen to their answers and take from them the things that work for you. Which do you think is more dangerous, racing or street riding?
Definitely street riding is more dangerous.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, there's here we're in a controlled atmosphere. We've got, everybody's going the same direction. We have an ambulance that's ready for us. We're running over the same piece of concrete time after time after time, so we know what's up ahead.
I think the street riding is more dangerous.
Why?
Because they're not watching for bikes on the street. They don't see you. I know so many people have been hit on the street and hurt really bad.
And on the track, everyone's going the same way, so I think it's a little bit safer out here because everyone's going in the same direction.
I believe street riding is more dangerous than racing.
Why?
The racetrack is more controlled. You know what's on the surface, you know what's coming up, you don't have anybody pulling out in front of you, and on the street, you just never know what's around the next corner.
Oh, definitely the street.
Why?
Well, you have a lot more obstacles. On the track, you have everyone's moving in the same direction than in a closed circuit, of course, so you don't have to worry about tractors or dogs running out in front of you, things like that.
Oh, by far street riding.
Why?
I mean, I think probably the main thing is the fact is that you have controlled circumstances on a race course, and on the street you have to deal with oil being in the middle of a turn, possibly sand or gravel or something along those lines, and then also you have to deal with cars, and also if you do have an unfortunate incident to fall off, you have to deal with stationary objects like trees and curbs and things like that. And it's that old cliche, it's not how fast you fall off, it's how fast you stop is what hurts you.
How do you steer a motorcycle?
Well, it's all in counter steering, of course, and it took me a long time to understand what counter steering meant until I was at Daytona one year, and my sponsor told me, which was Don Vesco, told me, well, Dave, yeah, you turn left to go right and right to go left. I said, no, you don't. And he goes, well, try it here at Daytona at the start-finish line. Just turn to the left and see where you go. And I tried that, and I ended up right by the wall. So, I learned real quick about counter steering, how important it is, and it really, it can help you as a rider.
So you better know that if you're a street rider.
Oh yeah, it'll help you in every way.
You steer the opposite way to initiate the turn and go from there.
Like counter steer.
Counter steer, yes. You try to hold the bars just well enough to keep your hands on them. The harder you hold them, the more the bike upsets.
Not real tight that you want to put a strain on your arms, just enough to hang on and so that you feel comfortable and your arms are relaxed.
You want to have somewhat of a loose grip on the handlebars, otherwise your hands get cramped up, you get real tired, you get real tense. If you're not comfortable, then your hands are going to hurt real bad.
In Street Smarts 1, we suggested you use the front brake only to stop your motorcycle. There's much debate now in the motorcycle community as to which works best, a combination of front and a little rear, or all front. One thing everyone does agree upon, though, is do not use the rear to stop the motorcycle. We can't stress that enough. So now listen to the experts and decide what works for you.
Which brake or brakes do you use while racing?
Oh, front, always, only.
And for street?
Same. I try to stay away from the rear brake all the time.
I use the front brakes primarily. I think they put two brakes on a motorcycle, so I think that the back brake has a purpose, but all that I use it for, if I'm heavy on the front end, I'll use the back lightly just to settle the back, to keep the weight down on the back.
Now in a street situation, which brakes would you use?
It's primarily I use still a lot more of the front. I'd say 80% of the front is what I use.
Mostly the front brakes.
Which brake or brakes would you use on the street?
Front brakes.
I always use both brakes, and the reason for that is because the front brake controls 70% of your braking power, and the back brake, the rear brake, controls about 30%. And although I would not recommend using the rear brake out on the racetrack because it is something that's very difficult to control and requires a lot of concentration and ability, out on the street, if you need to stop quickly, you want to use the braking power of both brakes.
Do you find it hard in a panic stop to monitor rear brake traction while the front brake is on hard?
No, I don't.
Is it hard to monitor rear brake traction while you have the front brake on?
Oh, I would say it's not impossible, but sure, it's harder to monitor. And if you have all the weight pitched forward on a motorcycle by using the front brakes real heavy, rear end's real light, has a tendency to want to lock up, and then if the rear wheel locks up, all your attention goes to the rear end of the motorcycle and not what's out in front of you.
But in an emergency, would you recommend both brakes?
No, I would recommend using the front and downshifting.
How do you practice braking?
Passing other riders.
Well, I think a lot of times, see, because I race, I can practice different racing techniques at a race course. I run one of the schools now, and I tell guys if we have a real sharp hairpin turn on one of the racetracks, just use that how you have to apply the brakes on this hairpin turn as if some little old lady had pulled out in front of you on the street someplace.
In a parking lot, and I practice it quite often, I take my bike to the extent that that front brake can brake it, bring it up to speed, and you've got to start at a very low speed. You don't want to start too fast, because then you're going to be riding over your head, and there's a chance that you can lock up the front brake and not remember what to do. And of course, if you did lock up the front brake, you'd want to release it immediately.
Or what?
Or you'll fall down because the front tire will turn in, and you'll do a nosedive.
Now here's a shot of that very same thing happening. Watch number 3. He goes into the corner with the brake on, the front brake on. And as you can see, you don't want to do that. You could have avoided that by getting off the brakes a little bit earlier. Here's another example of the same thing. You do not want to be on the brakes going into a corner. That's Rich Oliver, formerly USA champion, on one of Kenny Roberts' 500cc GP bikes. That's an expensive mistake.
How important is throttle control?
It's very important. With throttle control, what you want to try to do is maintain the RPMs, keep the bike nice and settled by just rolling it on smoothly. What you find, if you're too abrupt with the throttle, you get a lot of jerkiness. The bike starts to tend to act funny. If you roll it on nice and smooth, it helps your drives coming out of the corner. The smoother you are, the faster you go.
Throttle control in racing is really important. The smoother you are, the faster you can go. If you're real erratic on the throttle, it makes the suspension on the bike feel like it's not working. So it's real critical. And I do a lot of dirt bike riding to work on my throttle control, which I think really helps.
On the street, you really have to know your motorcycle. Some bikes are more forgiving than others, but if you get on a ZX11 and you don't have good throttle control, you're in the ground.
Throttle control along with brake control are the two most important things. Throttle control has to be very smoothly done. If you find somebody that comes off a corner and grabs a whole handful all at once, they aren't in full throttle control. They don't have an idea what they're doing. It should be nice and smooth movements compared to real radical ones.
Well, it's all about throttle control. You know, everything you do is about throttle control.
Across number 27, the guy who crashed early in the race, Chuck Graves down the inside. Graves through! Graves goes through and takes the lead back from Rich Oliver on his Marlboro Team Roberts YZR 500. Chuck Graves pulls a big wheelie in celebration.
Here we are on board with Chuck Graves at Brainerd International Raceway. You can see and hear how he uses the throttle.
How do you practice throttle control?
Well, again, the best way to practice anything is experience. So you get out and you go to your favorite part of Canyon Road or go to a racetrack and you practice being smooth with the throttle.
How do you brake in the corners if you have to brake?
Very lightly. Well, you ease on the brake. Or ease off a brake as you enter a corner and you start to lean over. If you have to brake while you're in a corner, you just want to roll the throttle out slightly and just ease the brake on. But if you get on them hard, it'll just throw you right on your head.
How do you brake in corners? That's difficult. It's a long process. I like to do all my braking straight up and down. I don't believe in trailing the brakes when you've already turned into a corner. I think that should already be done. And braking in corners, not that I don't use the engine to slow the motorcycle down with. However, you do want to be in the right gear so that when you let go of the brakes, you have proper RPM range so that you can accelerate.
Once I'm already in them, I'm off the front brake. I'm not on any brakes when I get into the corner.
In the corner, sometimes I try to use most of my braking in a straight line, but there are those points or places where you have to trail the brakes. And what I try to do is I'll just use one finger on the front brake, and as I need a little bit more to scrub the speed off, I'll just sort of tap it a few times, and that kind of pulls the front end down.
I brake all the way until I actually steer the bike into the corner, and I let the brakes off right as I steer into them. On some corners you can brake and steer into the corner, but most of it's braking all the way done and then you steer.
What if you have to put the brakes on in a corner, like someone's falling in front of you? What do? Do you stand the bike up? What do you do?
No, you just brake, and you brake real carefully.
Like not much?
Yeah, you don't grab a handful when you're keeled over.
Well, actually, you don't want to get on your brakes while you're leaned over. Some guys are pretty good. They can use the brake while they're in a corner. I suppose that's when you can use your rear brake a little bit. If you're really good at it, you can just tap it a little to slow you down.
I would say no. I don't use there's only a couple times, 3 times I think the rear brake can be used. And one is when you're leaned over at a 30% or greater lean angle in the middle of a turn. If you are very cautious with the rear brake, you can apply a little bit rear brake. If you try using the front when you're leaned over, it has a tendency to oversteer and wash the front end out. So I try to use a little bit of rear brake when I'm in the middle of the turn too fast.
But if you really do have to get on the brakes really hard, you'll have to stand it up and get on the brakes real hard. And then if you have to maneuver again, get off the brakes.
In an emergency situation, I would, if in the middle of the corner I had to get on the brakes, I would stand the bike straight up, apply as much brakes as necessary. Of course, if it looked like I was going to run off the corner, I would give it a last-ditch effort to lean the bike as far as I could, whether it meant dragging a knee or whatever. I would rather go down a low side than go off the side of a mountain and try to take my chances hitting a guardrail or a tree or a rock. So it's not as bad as it might sound, but sometimes you have to think quick enough and not get the brain lock to where you get a fixation on an object and drive into it. It's always better just to give it one more shot, try to lay the bike in, and if you have to, just keep leaning over and you'll probably walk away from it.
Stand the bike up. Usually, if you're leaned over and you jam on the brakes, I'm pretty sure you're going to go down. So you want to be straight up and down when you're on the brakes. Just like going into a corner, whenever you're on your brakes, you want to be straight up and down, especially in the rain.
Now, how do you avoid riders, bikes, or other things on the track that you don't want to hit?
Well, I think the main thing is that you don't want to have a target fixation on anything that falls off in front of you. You want to keep looking at where you want to go. If you're riding with somebody, you always have to have the idea that maybe they could possibly fall down in front of you and decide if you want to go around the outside of them, maybe getting taken out too, or you want to stay underneath them, and so that when they drift to the outside of the turn, you're not there along with them.
Usually if you're racing and someone crashes in front of you, whichever way you're turning, the bike is usually going to go the opposite way. So if you're in a right-hand turn, usually if someone goes down, they're going to go out to the left. So you want to just hold your line as much as possible.
Tries to get through. Alan Scott takes the lead. Kenny Roberts Jr. goes by under braking. No! Roberts Jr. is down. He locked up the front wheel too hard on the brakes.
You try to ride far enough ahead of yourself, and you do a lot of counter steering because that's the only way you can get the bike to turn fast.
So there's something in the street you got to avoid. You
counter steer and don't hit the back brake.
What you try to do is you look the other way, because again, if you get a fixation on a guy crashing, like today for instance, Robbie Peterson on a Honda crashed right in front of me. I had not very much room to maneuver around him, but what I did, I just picked a reference point. I looked away from the accident, looked away, and I was free and clear. As long as you can pick a point that's safe, look away. Just never look at an accident or something happening, because you go like a magnet, you go where you look.
Well, I usually pick up those things way before I get to them, and I make the direction changes that are necessary way before I get up to the end, that situation.
So you're looking ahead and anticipate what's happening.
Exactly.
And how would you could apply that to street riding for sure, right?
Well, looking ahead at it in anything you do in life is probably a good idea.
What do you do if you can't avoid things and you must go over them? Say you're on the freeway, a ladder or a 2x4.
Well, I've hit a ladder on a freeway, and you just try to hit it as straight as you can.
And do what? Do you do anything to the throttle, or?
No, not really. I just rode over it at the normal speed and just hope for the best. If you try to avoid it, most likely you're going to hit it at the wrong angle, and you're just going to be way out of shape.
In that situation, I think I'd give it more gas to try to get the front wheel light and get over it.
Physical skill to get these bikes around the racetrack.
Rich Oliver is now coming through that section where Adamo crashed. You can see the hay bales. Oh my! Rich Oliver got so close.
What changes in the rain about your riding? Braking, steering? What do you have to do in the rain?
In rain, you have to be a lot smoother with your braking. you probably even would use a little bit more rear brake than you would in the dry. But it's more of a technique of just learning the controls, learning the throttle response, also with the braking in the rain. It's a lot of fun riding in the rain. I enjoy it.
In the rain, everything has to be done straight up and down, brakes especially, a lot of acceleration, and just like I told you about throttle control has to be very smooth in the rain. You can't be radical with it because it'll want to spin you and spit you off sideways every time. I think actually riding in the rain prepares you a lot for getting that nerve hooked up that runs from your wrist to the ass of the tires. That nerve has to be hooked up in the rain, and if you can learn how to do it in the rain, then when you get in the dry, you're a much better rider.
Now, I think back to a terrifying moment you had at Seattle when the bike went sideways in the rain. What do you do when the bike does get out of shape in the rain? I mean, what do you do with your throttle?
Well, the number one thing is not to snap it shut, because if it's sliding and you snap it shut, it has a tendency to want to high side you, grab traction and high side you off. It's such a minute process. It's difficult to think that somebody could do this, but actually I try to roll the throttle back a little bit so that it can catch up with itself and not come too far around.
You never want to hit the brakes in the rain while you turn over. That thing will just slide right out from under you. So you want to do all your braking straight up and down. Usually you can brake just as hard in the rain as you can in the dry, but long just straight up and down.
In the rain, I'll tend to use a little bit more back brake and braking on the street, and just real cautious of where you ride on the street, not right in the middle where the car's oil drains. You ride more toward the dotted line where the tires run, so you don't have as much oil, and just real cautious on the brakes.
Riding in the rain is a whole different ballpark. You have to really be careful. You can't lay the bike over as far. You're going at a lot slower pace.
Here's a shot of Scott Russell at Seattle International Raceway, practicing extremely good technique in the rain.
Caught all the time by Pascal Picot on the fast Yamaha. Picot getting the Yamaha very, very sideways.
So the key word in the rain is be smooth. Smooth with the throttle, smooth with the brakes, smooth in everything you do on the motorcycle, and be aware you can't lean it over quite as much as you can in the dry. Apply these techniques to your street riding, and be aware that your visibility is cut, and so is that of other motorists. So beware in the rain.
Does dirt riding help racing, and would it improve street riders' ability?
Definitely. There's no practice that you can get anywhere like riding a dirt bike.
What do you think it does for a rider that it improves?
You learn how to fall down. You learn how to slide the motorcycle around. You learn how to pick up information and for changing surfaces. You learn to react really quickly.
That's a hard one to answer. I don't think from the mechanics that you have to do riding a street bike, it helps out a lot. I think it does, however, help you physically be prepared for riding a street bike. You use a lot of the same muscles. You may ride in the dirt and get it sideways and be able to catch it, but the asphalt is so much different than the dirt is that it's very difficult to compare the two.
I think it does. And I started on the street and I was on the track before I ever rode in the dirt. And I'm amazed. It really is, because first of all, you can fall down in the dirt and not get hurt. And you can try a lot of things. You might be intimidated to try because you're afraid to damage your bodywork on the street. It does teach you quite a lot.
Usually they say dirt riding improves street riding and road racing for the simple fact that you're used to the bike sliding around on you. In the rain, a lot of guys that motocross, they come out here and they do really good in the rain because they're used to the bike sliding. And on the street, I suppose if you're gonna, it's a lot of debris on the street that you don't know about. And you want to be able to take control of the situation if you hit some debris.
I think it improves your all-around riding ability and how to control a motorcycle. So in essence, it would improve your street riding.
Yeah, it does. I started racing in the dirt, or riding in the dirt, and what it helps you more than anything is if you do brake traction in a corner, you know instantly how to react. It's not anything to be scared about. It's knowing how to control it once it does start a slide.
All right, that brings up a point. What do you do when the back end starts to slide out a bit? What do you do with the throttle?
you just try to be real smooth with it, because the worst thing to do is to snap it shut, because then it's going to make the motorcycle want to stand up and do what's called the snake walk. And a lot of times you'll end up going over the handlebars or falling down. So what I try to do is controllably roll it off a little bit, let it gain traction, and then just carry on.
What do you do when you get into a corner and you're going too fast?
I push down more on my handlebar, my inner handlebar. The thing I don't want to do is panic, straighten up the bike, and go into opposing traffic, because that's very dangerous. You need to trust, I think other people as well need to trust the ability of your tires and just lean in a little bit more. Look at that turn just a little bit more. You don't want to brake, you don't want to roll off the throttle, but you want to hold it steady and not continue to roll on.
Basically, like I said, is that I get into a corner, and let's say if I've lost the front end, it started to tuck a little bit, I will use a little throttle to try to bring it back. However, too much throttle can keep pushing it harder, so it's a difficult, minute line there. Also, if I'm going too fast, like I said, if I'm leaned over and I've gotten used to being able to apply very little pressure to the rear brake, I'll maybe use a little rear brake then, but I'm not on the front at all.
Would you try to lean the bike over more to scrub off more speed?
Oh yeah, I think I can do that. I think it's difficult for most people to get used to doing that, to scrubbing off speed by leaning it over.
Well, what would you not want to do if you entered a corner too fast?
Well, first of all, is panic. That'll put you down faster than anything else. And then again, if you apply either rear brake or front brake too hard, motorcycle's a gyroscope. It always wants to self-right itself. It wants to go straight. So you got to understand that if you apply the brakes too hard and still have traction left, it's going to want to pick it up and make it go straight off the turn. I wouldn't want to use a whole lot of front brake, like I said, because if it's already oversteering, then that'll just cause it to oversteer more.
Lean over more. Usually that's what you do.
What don't you want to do?
Well, you don't want to panic. The first thing you never want to do is panic. You want to keep your cool and just make the necessary changes. You can ease on the brake, ease off the throttle, and ease the bike over a little more. You can always lean the bike over a little further.
How do you go over bumps?
I stand up on the pegs and just get my butt off the seat.
On the street, I just try, on all my motorcycles I ride, I have a steering dampeners, which also will help if there's any sudden movement or change of pavement or a pothole or something like that. Best thing to do is not panic. Usually the suspension will carry you over it.
Bumps, depending. You have to have a grip on the bars. And you have to, I would say, you have to use throttle control there to make sure that you go over the bumps. Because if you go over the bumps and you shut the throttle off, it loads the front end with the weight transfer back again, which can cause you more serious problems.
How do you get out of a tank slapper?
Usually if you stay in the throttle, it'll straighten back up, but ease up on the bars and stay in the throttle.
So do you think tank slappers are brought on by bad riding, holding the grips too tight, or what?
A lot of times tank slappers are brought on by what happens is the wheel tends to move one way, and then you go to counter steer the other way, and it's already moved that way. Now you're pushing on the other bar again, and you just make the problem worse and worse and worse. And if you just ease off on the handlebars, usually it'll just straighten right up.
Well, really the thing is I think is that if a tank slapper happens, your natural reaction is to shut the throttle off. If you shut the throttle off, and maybe if you can save it for 1 or 2 times, then turn the throttle back on and get the weight transfer to the back wheel so that the front becomes easier and won't want to keep hopping back and forth.
What do you think causes tank slappers? Too tight a grip on the bar?
Ooh, hard to say. It could be a tight grip on the bar, and also actually the road conditions, if they're too bad. I think basically all motorcycles should have a steering dampener of some type on them to kind of take away from having to have that real white knuckle grip on the bars.
What I find is just to hang on, never say die. A lot of people will go ahead and let go of the handlebars or jump off thinking they're dead. But I'll tell you, you can have the thing just about airborne from going side to side, and as long as you try to grab it, it starts to get violent, and what you try to do is just grab the handlebars and try to just get them back, because they're sort of bouncing and skipping off the pavement. You just want to stop that. Try to just get control.
How do you improve night riding?
Improving night riding, basically it's all on your vision. You want to keep a clear shield. You don't want to use a smoke shield at night. You want to use either a clear shield or an amber shield.
Well, that's interesting because last night was the first time I went out on a nighttime practice, and it really, you have to really be looking ahead because things still on a racetrack, you're going so fast. You just want to make sure that you see far enough ahead to where you're not going to get into a problem. And even same with street riding. There's a lot of times you can't see oil or if there's coolant on the road at night especially. So I don't ride that much on the street at nighttime unless I get caught in a situation to and from work where I stayed late. Then I just drive slowly. I'll do the speed limits.
Good lighting will improve your night riding, and also what will improve it on the racetrack is following someone around that has a lot of night experience, and that'll give you the experience.
But even still, at the high speeds they're competing at, the effect of the bright lights is certainly diminished. Here we see a group of riders coming over turn 6, over the brow of the hill, and down the fast back straightaway. You can see the reflective tape I mentioned. As they drop one gear, there's no reduction in speed because of the darkness whatsoever.
What do you do when you crash? What can a rider do?
It's a difficult situation to answer because most of the time I'd like to say if you can get on your back, it's the largest area of displacement on your body, and try to keep your arms and legs stretched out so that you don't start tumbling or tripping over. It's when you start digging something in, a leg or a heel or something, it makes you want to flip, is when you start breaking bones.
Slide on your back. Stay on your back.
Don't stiffen up and try to go off the low side. If you know there's a situation where you're going to crash, just, find the lowest way out, which is the low side. You don't want to go over the high side. What I mean by that is just take the motorcycle, and if you have to, grab the front brake and turn it in, and you'll find yourself a nice slide. You'll probably get up and walk away.
When you know you're going to crash, don't try and break the fall. Just go ahead, get away from the bike. Don't try and hang on to the bike if you know you're going to crash. The bike usually weighs at least 400 pounds. That's a lot of weight.
To lay a bike down, what do you do?
Well, I can just jump off. I mean, it's just, I'm not scared to jump off. If I get in a situation where I feel there's no way out, I'll just jump to the left or jump to the right, depending on which corner it is. And what you want to do is just plant your hands on the ground. You're gonna land on your knees and your palms of your hands, and you just try to control your slide and just stay low to the ground. Don't try to stand up till you know you're stopped. Because with today's safety equipment, the leathers we have, you have a lot of protection all over.
I've never done it, and I really don't believe that it's necessary to do that. I think that if you've got the ability, first of all, to ride within your level of riding, then there's no reason to lay a bike down. You should be able to stop that bike, you should be able to not lock up both brakes, and you should be able to counter steer around an obstacle.
Wherever you ride, especially in town with a lot of lanes, you should be looking ahead. Whenever there's a situation where you have 2 or 3 lanes going through an intricate corner, you should expect some sort of trouble there. So as you move in through the traffic flow, expect them to move over. I mean, you just have to not be surprised when it happens to you, as this rider will be. And if you are cut off, don't spend time looking at him. Look forward. That's where your attention should be. Another thing is don't ride around your kickstand down. It could knock you over and you look really stupid. Now, as you know, intersections are dangerous places, and you know some of the things to watch for. Now, everyone is different. Now, here the rider should be looking to his left, up the hill, where the cars come down very fast and make a right-hand corner. That's where his attention should be, because that's where the danger is in his present position. He should be ready to move at any time. Now, when you come to a stop in an intersection and you're going to put your foot down, put it in the tire track. Don't put it in the center of the lane where the oil and the antifreeze is. So remember, always in the tire track. Now, when driving on a 2-lane road and you're passing by a place of interest like a beach in the summer or a park or a game, you want to move in the lane away from where everyone is parking and pulling in and out. And you also want to be aware that cars coming the opposite direction might be doing U-turns in front of you, so move away from where the activity is. Now, when you're in traffic and a bus or a truck stops in front of you, don't just rip by. You must clear the area in front of the truck because you do not know what is there. And if there's something coming out of there, they can't see you and you can't see them, so be aware of that. Now, when you're riding in the canyons or the mountains, you want to ride also in the tire tracks. And we've already told you to move to the outside of a corner and come in. But one thing you want to do is look ahead at corners. And if you don't know the road, you can sometimes spot certain tire marks, people locking up brakes. If it's a sharp corner, it's going to give you trouble. Most likely it already has given other riders trouble. So be looking ahead for tire marks where they lock the wheel up. You can learn a lot by looking into a corner. Now here's an example right here. Someone locked up a brake right there going into that corner. You should watch for that. Now as you go through, you can see in slow motion, other people had worse trouble. This guy, a couple guys went off on a motorcycle right here. You can see the screech marks going right over the canyon. Now that was caused by, they came in way too fast for this corner, locked up the brakes and sailed right over the edge there. You just do not want to speed on the street, whether you're in the canyon. If you want to go fast and race, go to the racetrack. Another thing to be aware of is look ahead and don't go ripping into areas where it's covered in shadow. That's especially true in the mornings because there could be dew there, it could be wet. You do not have the visibility. So as you're driving, look ahead. Okay, another thing to be watching out for when you're riding is watch out for turnouts. There is a turnout on the right. Your big danger here is you're going to come sailing around the corner and you're going to get a motorhome coming out to take a look at the view. So slow down for those. In town, whenever you see police cars, fire engines, emergency situations, people are not looking at you on the motorcycle. They're looking over there, so they can be coming up to you and they're looking at the cop, and you better be ready to get out of the way. Another thing is when you go to the right-hand lane in town, anyone can turn from the left lane at any time. So as you're going by cars, expect them to come over. Now in town, your number one danger is cars turning left in front of you. Here's a shot from inside the car of you hopefully getting out of the way. So be watching for this because they do not see you. You can practice your motorcycle riding when you're not riding your motorcycle. You can do that when you're driving your car. When you see a motorcycle, watch him. See when he disappears, see when he's vulnerable. You can learn from watching other riders. And if you have a car driver's mindset, you'll understand when you are vulnerable. You can watch and see if other riders are doing the correct things, like that rider looked both ways before he crossed the intersection. That's very good. Here, you can see that a motorcyclist is very vulnerable here. You should be aware of those situations. Here you see when it's easy to disappear in a mirror. You talk about being in blind spots. There are always blind spots. Slow down in alleys. They may look deserted, but there's a lot of danger. People backing out, dogs, the list goes on forever. Now, one other thing we said in Street Smarts 1 is motorcycles stop faster than cars. That's not always true. You wouldn't want to try to stop as fast as this Porsche, especially in the rain or if the road is a little bit dirty, so be aware of that. Okay, in town and you're in a two-lane road, you're on the right-hand lane. If there's a truck going kind of slow ahead of you in the left lane, he's making a sharp turn, don't scoot around on the right-hand side. He may come over, and you do not want to mess with that with a 40-ton truck and curb on the right-hand side. That's something you don't want to do. When entering a freeway and you decide to split lanes, look behind you because there may be other motorcyclists who are doing the same things. A lot of guys will just shoot right out. Here he thought the road was clear. He went, whoa, two more guys. So clear your lane before you move into it. Very important.
When I'm not racing, this is what I do Monday through Friday. I would say a heavy percentage, at least 80% of the accidents that I see that involve motorcyclists out here in the Los Angeles area, you will always get the telltale black rear lock skid. And even after the statements of the rider, you will ask them what brakes did they use. They will always swear that they used everything, but the skid mark doesn't lie. You'll see that long, definite black rubber in the asphalt or on the concrete leading right up to the point of impact. And you cannot convince them that they've done anything else. But I think in a panic situation, that's what most everybody seems to go to, right? For that, just slam that rear brake on and stand on it. You should practice. You should be confident with your equipment. You should take yourself to an area where there is nobody. Practice with just your rear brake. See what it feels like. Put it into the little skid at 10, 15 miles an hour. Feel what it feels like. Then make a stop at 15, 20 miles an hour, feathering, squeezing, ever so gently that front brake, and see what it's going to do for you. And continue to practice that every day. Take a little time here, even out on the road. I'm not in the middle of, the traffic on the Hollywood freeway, but attempt to always use that front brake and rely on it, because in a panic situation, you're going to return to the way that you've trained yourself or the way that you were trained. And you won't automatically slam that right foot down on the brake and forget to grab some of the front brake. And again, your senses, you want to rely on those. Again, what puts fear in my heart, especially down here, is the smell of diesel fuel. It's an unmistakable smell. If you have never smelled it before, go down and take a whiff of it, because this stuff is like ice. It's black ice. If you smell it, you're probably already sitting in it. You can't accelerate out of it. You put your foot down to stop. Your foot is not going to remain on the ground. You make a right or a left-hand turn or accelerate away from that, the bike's probably going to go down, and there's not a thing you can do about it. Again, that's one of the many things to pay attention to. Going into an intersection on a green light, even not from a dead stop, you want to slow down going through that intersection. A good speed, again, you want to be looking at your speedometer, but slow down to about 25 miles an hour. That gives you that sense of safety. If somebody is going to make a left-hand turn looking at you, even though they do look at you, a lot of times they're still going to make that left-hand turn. 25 miles an hour is just enough to give you a little braking momentum, steer right, steer left, or even come to a complete stop and allow that vehicle to go by you. I know it's hard for a lot of riders to do this. It's hard to give up that little ego that you have. You want to go head-to-head with these people. You don't want to do that on a bike. Just give them right away. Even though it's not their right away to have, give it to them. Give it up. Let them have it. Let them go through. Make that unsafe left-hand turn in front of you. Let them go through that red light. But about 25 miles an hour is just fast enough to get you through the intersection, not to impede traffic coming up behind you, and gives you that leeway that if something dangerous, something hazardous to your health and to your body and to your equipment does happen to come through, you got plenty of time to stop, use that good front braking, combination braking, come to a complete stop, or at least steer around it. So slow down to about 20, 25 miles an hour going through that intersection.
Think about your riding and discover how you can add the information in this tape to your personal riding style. And most of all, ride safe and have fun.